Not yet, Travis. All right, that was a sneak peek at our guest speaker. And if you're joining us today, you are watching Succession Planning Controlling Your HVAC Business Legacy, an important topic for a lot of business owners. And we're going to get to it in just a few seconds. I'm going to invite the hosts on. But first, just a few housekeeping items. My name is Matthew Bradford. I'm your host with HREI's webinars. Happy to invite you to another session. And if you want to do a webinar of your own, please reach out to me over the HREI website and we can get something scheduled. We've got a broad range of topics and a lot of good people have come and went on these, and you can be the next one. But without further ado, just a couple other things. If you'd like to ask a question during this session, you can see at the bottom of your screen, we have a Q&A button. We also have a chat function as well. So place them in either of those and we will get to it. And now I would ask Travis, Allan, Matthew Langsford to pop on their cameras and say hello. They're going to be the ones taking us through this subject. Hello, guys.
The big windup. Thanks, Matt.
The big windup. That's
Thanks,
the
Matt.
spiel.
Nice.
That's the
Nice to be
spiel.
here.
The big
So
windup.
at this point, I am going to fade into the background and keep an eye on chat and Q&A. So if anyone's got questions, meet me in there. But until then, I will leave you guys to do your thing.
Okay. Mr. Langsford, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good day in sunny Oakville, for sure.
It is sunny. Take the
All right,
sun.
we've got a great group of people here looking for some value on our topic here. So thank you all for joining Matt and I today. We'll just start off by saying that I've known Matt for a number of years now. Matt's not only a great human, he's also someone with immense passion for value creation. He's got a great business mind. He's a super out of the box thinker. So Matt's going to be our subject expert today, and I'm going to try and bring some real life experiences into the discussion. So we hope you enjoy our approach, which is our style, which is an informal and just having a great conversation. So Matt, why don't you let everybody know a little bit about yourself, and then I'll do the same.
Sure. Thanks, Travis.
Yeah.
So Matt Langsford, I've been working with business owners and their families on both the business transition and wealth planning side for over 2 decades. In addition to being a seasoned wealth advisor, I have specialized knowledge and certification in the areas of both family enterprise and exit planning advising. And after being part of numerous business transitions over the years with clients, I've developed a passion for helping hardworking business owners transition their business on their terms, their timeline, and achieving a fulfilling life post-business sale or succession. So that's just an overview of who I am and what I do.
Okay, that's very good. So I'll do mine. So I was born in 78. I've got a couple of kids. I've been married for about 30 years. I have an MBA from the Ivy School of Business. I'm an avid investor in private equity as well as capital markets. Our family business, as some of you might know, is called Able Pest Control, which is it turns 100 years old this year. Super proud of that. So I have a lot of experience with family-owned businesses as well as in private equity-owned companies, where my key area of involvement has been CEO. I started my professional career when I was 20 years old. I bought a business that I was working at, which I grew to 40 locations over 15 years, and then exited that to private equity. My previous role from the one I'm in now was I was the CEO of an IoT company that had focused on burst pipes and commercial asset classes. This was an investment that I got into in 2018, which I then took public in 2022 and then exited that business. So now I'm currently the CEO of Eclipse Home Services in partnership with Tribe Capital, which is a Dallas-based private equity firm. Eclipse exists to consolidate the commercial and residential HVAC space in Canada. We're focused on building a great company with a culture and legacy first mindset to ensure fit and alignment with everyone that Eclipse either partners with or buys outright. I'm extremely excited about the opportunity we have at Eclipse, as I truly believe that the offering we have factually provides owners with flexibility and a safe and trusting process with real value creation. So no doubt today we're going to be sparking some curiosity and some things like that. Matt and I want everybody to know that it doesn't have to end here. We're going to have our contact information up on at the end of the presentation, and we're happy to chat with anybody that has any questions or anything like that. This is not always the easy experience to go through when you're talking about succession and planning and transition. So it is definitely an art and a science, and Matt and I can definitely be helpful. So Matt, why don't we get into it here?
Sure.
So first topic of discussion today is, why is business transition planning important, particularly crucial in small and medium-sized businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess where I'd start is, business transition planning is important to all businesses, big and small.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest issues out there is that many business owners wrongfully assume that when comes time to sell their business, there'll be buyers lined up to buy it.
Yeah.
This would be a wrong assumption. In fact, a study out of the Exit Planning Institute suggests that only 2 out of every 10 businesses that actually go to market sell,
Mhm.
and many don't realize full value. So that would be the first point on the importance of getting ahead of the planning and making sure that you're prepared to go to market
Yeah.
successfully. I'd say the other reason why it's so important is proper planning is even that much more crucial for small to medium-sized businesses because potential buyer pools are
Yeah.
much smaller. Most financial buyers, i.e. PE firms, and even strategic buyers are looking to acquire companies that are typically much bigger and start looking at companies with no less than 25 million in sales or 5 million in profits.
Like
That's
a little, almost like a little more
standard.
polished, eh? Like a little more polished, where, that information's easier and things like that. So all that succession planning and whatnot kind of leads into that.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the bigger your company is, typically the more potential buyers out there for you. So smaller companies in general have a harder time finding a buyer, and especially one willing to pay top dollar.
Yeah.
So that'd be a second point around the importance. And then lastly, I'd say most businesses today were started by baby boomers who are approaching retirement age in the next 5 to 10 years, and will all be looking to head to the exit door at the same time.
Yeah.
And what's been a seller's market for businesses up until now is expected to shift quite quickly to a buyer's market over the next few years.
Yeah.
And also interest rates being higher and access to capital more challenging. The same frenzied buying environment we've seen previously is unlikely to be repeated anytime soon.
Yeah.
So only the most prepared and transferable businesses will sell. In fact, CFIB came out with a report called the Succession Tsunami
Right.
that speaks to this very point and outlook.
Matt, you have a lot of your clients kind of digging into this right now. I mean, I know your transition, you do what you do, but transition and being a specialist in that place is right on your sleeve there for sure. So, do you have a lot of clients coming to you with that these days? And, big, small companies, is it a bigger discussion, this year versus last year? Or...
Yeah, I'd like to say every year we get involved with more and more mandates around helping business owners prepare for a sale or succession.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to only continue because, as I said, just the demographics supporting the need to exit over the next couple of years are
Yeah.
just starting to build on themselves. So yeah, definitely, without question. And that's why I launched Business Transition Coach as part of my offering,
Yeah.
is to really kind of create some specific deliverables around how we help business owners and their family best prepare.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're going to get into a few more of these. Some of these questions are going to unpack more of the insights as it relates to some of the content there. So maybe we'll move on to the next one. And then as we get through this, we'll kind of circle back around if we've got some time and kind of unpack a few of these things a bit deeper. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. So are there any real world examples from your experience that highlight the impact of effective business transition planning? I'll have a little bit to add to this at the end, just giving my real world experience, which also kind of leads itself into the previous discussion around planning and kind of what I went through, from having, 3 locations to 10 and thinking about things differently. Oh my God, there's so much that goes into kind of when the timing is right and that type of thing. So any real world examples, clients, things like that have kind of done a really good job at this and planned initially and then came in after that and really kind of did well with their sale. I mean, getting a sale done on time and for the right price with, whatever type of obligations they are after the transaction's done is kind of nirvana, right? Like where you want to get the highest payer, the best timeline, the best structure and that type of thing. So any real world examples on your side?
Definitely. I mean, given we work pretty well exclusively with business owners and focus on business transition planning, we have numerous examples I could highlight. The good, the bad, and the ugly, unfortunately. When it comes to business sales, I've seen it all. The one thing I can say is every client that took the time to think through a plan well in advance of a sale all had a better outcome, period. So that's something that I wanted to throw out there as a point. So there's a few examples I can share that highlight the importance the importance, but one particularly stands out. So I can talk about one of my clients. He was an owner of a company in the industrial pump sector.
Not one of them is me, right? Not one of them
No,
is me.
no, you're not
The
in this.
good, the bad, or the ugly.
Yeah, you're not in this camp,
Okay.
fortunately. So, they had a great business. They offered a niche product that was in high demand, and the business had attractive margins. Overall, a great business that was growing.
Yeah.
But it was a cyclical business, given its end customers were in the oil and gas business.
Right.
And in around 2010, my client was contemplating a sale and was approached by a mergers and acquisition guy out of the US. And this fellow convinced my client that his business could fetch a 12 times EBITDA or profit in the market, despite other similar businesses fetching 8 times at most.
Sorry, who was this that did that, Matt? Who gave the advice?
So it was an individual he had met at an industry event in Chicago, and
Understood.
this guy was a specialist in, or so he said, a specialist in selling businesses of this type. And he convinced my client that that he could get 12 times EBITDA in the market. And
Yeah.
the problem was, once that was kind of planted in my client's head, he wrongly anchored his expectations on a sale price to this unreasonable multiple.
Yeah.
So what happened was the 12 times multiple offer never materialized.
Yeah.
So, to kind of save the deal, I managed to bring in a large Chicago-based private equity firm to the table, who offered 8 times.
Yeah.
My client ended up being offended and
Yeah.
never even responded to their offer, even though it was
Expectations, eh? Oh my gosh, are they so
right. That's kind of where I'm going with this. Even though
Yeah,
it
for
was
sure.
more than fair and they were
Yeah.
a qualified buyer. If you fast forward to 2014, when the oil and gas sector fell on hard times, all of a sudden my client's company was fighting for its life. My
Yeah.
client had to put money back into the business to keep things going.
Oh, that's the ugly. That's the ugly, I hope.
That's the ugly. And it took
Yeah.
5 years for the financials. There's a silver
Oh my
lining,
God.
but there's a lesson here.
You
So
miss a window, eh? You miss a window, like to your point earlier, a lot of people think, and me, I was ignorant to that too initially, of you think there's going to be a buyer there right away, and oh my God, everything takes time. Everything takes twice as long as you think it's going to take. Everything costs a little bit more depending at which stage you're at. So yeah, for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so it took 5 years for the financials to recover. They never hit where they were at the top. But fortunately, a strategic buyer came in 3 years ago and bought the company outright. But it was for less than what the private equity firm was willing to pay 8 years prior. So when we work with business owners on transition planning, one area we focus on is determining a reasonable valuation based on real-time data, right? So the report that we provide gives you a range of value that an owner can confidently plan and negotiate around. Not knowing the value of your business, you may be selling for too little or not at all if expectations are unrealistic, like this case. So know your business value, I guess, is the lesson learned through this particular example.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brutal, eh? You can get caught on the outside looking in, where you could have had an exit and obtained, an aggregate amount of money, and now you have to run the business, sell it for less, and arguably work 5 years under stress and pressure for no more aggregate dollars if you would have sold previously. So it can be a lot of heartburn. There's no doubt about it. So I'll give my real experience. So just so everybody understands, I'm an insane planner. I plan like crazy. And my approach is always to try and view the plan all the way down to the end, and then think about it in reverse to bring that execution strategy back to the forefront so that you can have, a nice structure to work with. And so we'll get onto that a little bit later, but I actually did that my sale in 2 different spots. So 2 years previous to selling the business, I went to market with it. And it took probably 6 months, didn't get much interest in it, et cetera, et cetera. And then found out the somewhat the hard way that, hey, we got to polish this thing up. We got to get it teed up and ready for the right buyers to look at it, et cetera, et cetera. So I did that on the second run, and the business sold within 6 weeks and was cashed out on the spot with no commitment thereafter. So a bit of an example here to kind of layer that in. But when you get these buyers coming to the table, they're busy, they've got opportunities, they've got to move quickly. The more clumsy, the more choppy it is, the less conviction you have, and the longer it takes. So Yeah, okay, all right. Let's jump on to the next one here. Are you done with that, Matt? You got anything else to
Yeah,
add there?
no, that's the example I thought kind of drives home the importance of knowing your business value before you go down the road of even
Yeah.
contemplating a sale or succession.
Yeah, and it's a tough conversation, right? And for some people, how big their business is, the stage they're at in their business, maybe they don't want to really sell it, but they kind of have to, So there's all of those factors that have to come into play with the planning. The last thing you want to be at is, at the altar with not being able to figure any of it out. So, okay, so what specific factors from your perspective commonly influence the valuation for medium to small businesses? I personally love this question. I think this is like a meat on the bone. Hopefully, people have a notepad out and they can kind of tick some boxes here. But what do you think are commonly influencing valuation, specifically valuation?
Yeah, this is again from being through a number of transactions over the years, but also speaking to, M&A, merger and acquisition specialists, investment bankers, and actually the end buyers, right? Typically private equity firms to understand, what makes their job easy in either positioning a business or buying a business. And I
Yeah,
think top of the list for all of those groups would be transferability. So a business
yeah,
only has value for a buyer if it can actually transfer that value. And if the business
yeah,
is too, for example, if the business is too heavily reliant on the owner or lacks documented processes, these are major issues for a buyer, and would
yeah. That
likely
was
lead.
one of my issues on the first go, Matt. That was one of
Is
my
that right?
issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
was
you
for
live
sure.
that, right?
I
And
lived it. Yeah,
because that's where they can kind of retrade you on a lower valuation, given the
yeah,
risk that value transfer is much higher in that case, right? So
yeah,
without question, that concept around transferability is important. Not having updated, clean financial reporting is another big factor. You only get one chance to build trust, and if that trust is breached because of spotty financial reporting or questions around certain items on the P&L statement,
yeah,
usually you don't regain that trust in the negotiation. So I think in order to negotiate and defend a price, you need to make sure buyers can't poke holes in your numbers.
yeah,
Like all transactions, as I mentioned, it comes down to trust. So this is a big issue we often see. The other big one too is if you think about it, customer concentration, right?
yeah.
On
Big
paper,
time.
your numbers could look spectacular, but when you
Especially in like enterprise
down,
commercial businesses and things like that, like where you got a lot of relationships. Like this
correct.
industry is riddled with heavy relationship to drive value, and we're seeing that in the market now with concentration. And I can tell you real life example that when we're looking at companies today in the commercial asset, even their design of their revenue is a huge difference. Where one guy could be a pure play on construction, and the other one could be a pure play on service, and that matters big time. And the customer concentration piece is it's a tough one to have because it is a lot of these things are relationship based, and that concentration into that customer is the buyer gets a little weary, which then forces them to either peel price or create structure that might not be advantageous. So that's a great point on the concentration.
Yeah, I call it the valuation killer, right? Because
Okay, there you go. Yeah, it
again,
is.
like on paper, everything kind of checks out until you realize, over 50% of the revenue and profits being driven by one customer relationship. So,
Yeah,
even with when we construct investment portfolios for some of our wealth clients, diversification, is a concept that I think holds true to a business as well. You need to diversify as much as you can. Otherwise, you're going to get called out for that when it comes time to try and transact on a sale or a succession of the business. And I think the last point, in terms of like what drives valuation,
yeah,
you know, what really drives valuation is what we kind of sort of coin intangible assets, right?
mm,
So when you think about the people, right, that work for you, the processes that you've developed around how you do business, the client goodwill, potentially some, unique IP
yeah.
that you've developed, all of this stuff creates value above and beyond just the profit line and a multiple on the profit line. And I've
Especially if the
seen
buyer, if you're thinking about the buyer, right? Like private equity versus straight strategic, it's a different valuation proposition. It's a different rationale as to why that works, et cetera, et cetera.
very much so. And
Yeah, big time.
I've been absolutely surprised at times to see businesses that, from a P&L standpoint don't line up all that well. Like they're
Yeah.
good, but not great in terms of their peer group, but went for some, ridiculous multiple simply because they had something that was
Yeah.
unique. And so intangible assets are an area that all business owners should start to focus on, especially ahead of any type of sale, because
Yeah.
that's really what creates sort of that extra pop in valuation when you go to market.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's me again. We have
Hey,
a question. I was wondering if Travis could field, or Travis or Matt.
I'll let you know how hard the question is. If it's hard, it goes to Matt. If it's easy, it goes to me.
I put my
Thanks
glasses
so
on
much.
and look studious.
From Vince, as a buyer, any other key factors you look at when determining a fair price for a business you are considering buying?
Any other? Say that one more time.
Sure thing. As a buyer, are there any other key factors you look at when determining a fair price for a business you are considering buying?
Yeah. Oh, without giving the inside playbook, there's lots of factors, but I think maybe the best way to answer that would be trying to understand the buyer. So, I mean, if I speak from private equity perspective, and if there's any potential people that want to have a conversation with us later on, you can hold me to account on this. But what we look at is geography, positioning, sales mix, all of those things. The more diverse the business is, but still with staying with, sticking to your knitting, but diverse as it relates to customers and service and cash flows, whether you've got lumpy seasonal revenue and things like that. We really take a look at the whole picture of the business. So I can tell you this, which is super interesting. When I was selling my company, you have no idea. Like, what are they thinking? What do they know? Is it going to happen? And understanding kind of who the buyer is very, very important because you'll be able to figure that out. But bigger buyers are going to think about the geography, how well it fits into the platform that we have. This could go down to even people. So when we look at businesses, we look at the people you have. So the bigger the superstars that are in there, the better trained they are, the more value there. So it's about establishing, price on, EBITDA and a multiple, but it's also, like Matt said, I mean, the intangible piece of like, what can I do with some of these assets? So we look at all those things. That's a great question. Yeah.
Yeah, and I could comment just on one aspect of which is you're seeing this sort of disrupt most businesses
Yeah.
and sectors is, the concept around creating recurring revenue, right?
Yes.
So, can your business model create an offering that allows you to sort of clip a coupon on a monthly basis,
Yeah.
irrespective of, activity? And
Yeah.
there's a lot of businesses from car washes, for example, and I'm sure even within the HVAC business on the servicing side, where you can create something that the marketplace will
Yeah.
value and pay you a regular ongoing fee for. I think that has a massive
Yeah.
impact on what a potential buyer is willing to pay for a revenue stream.
Yeah, for sure. For sure it is. I just lost my train. I thought I was going to say something. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. Okay, let's jump into the next one, which is what are some practical strategies businesses can employ to enhance their value before entering the selling process? From your perspective.
Yeah, okay. I would say, start building out the next generation of leaders in the business.
Yeah.
Who can you mentor and eventually get to run the day-to-day operations? Finding the right future leader takes time and effort and needs to
Yep.
start ideally years in advance of any sale.
Mhm.
And this comes back down to transferability. If you're exiting the business and no longer involved, who's going to run it, right? So you have to
Yeah.
start getting that in place early. The goal is to have a business owner gradually over time move away from the day-to-day operations and focus more on, maybe business development and business strategy. So
Hey,
that
Matt, isn't it interesting? Like a PE buyer thinks unbelievably about all those things, but
Mhm.
a strategic buyer thinks not so much about that stuff. I mean, the people, if they already have those people and things like that. So, I mean, just in terms of the pathway, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to illustrate that, you have one scenario that works and another scenario that doesn't, which is a big reason for the planning and teeing this up ahead of
Well,
time.
and you don't want to limit your options, right? So
Yeah.
there's all different options out there that you can consider as a business owner to exit the business, and everybody's circumstance is different.
Mhm.
And you're right. A strategic buyer typically is less concerned because they've got an
Yeah.
infrastructure and team in place to take over. But still building out some redundancy in the business is also important from a contingency planning
Yeah.
perspective, right? If something happens to you as the owner,
Yeah, the dependency, the owner dependency.
right, from death,
Yeah.
disability, or otherwise, then you need somebody who can competently step in. So I think there's multiple reasons why you would look at that. The other thing I would say, practical wise, is if you've outgrown your accountant, and this isn't a knock to the accounting profession, but it is important to seek out a firm that can ensure your financial reporting is up to snuff.
I'm going something through there like this now with my mom, as
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
As you know, she had an advisor, and I was with her over the weekend, and she's got that, been with this lady 20 years, and I'm going to lose a friend and all this kinds of stuff, and I'm the executor. So I'm like, Mom, listen, like, I can't, if this is coming into my world and it's a different world, it has to be with the appropriate people, although it hurts a bit, and you got to be, respectful to your process and what you're responsible to. And that was the conversation. It was a tough conversation, like straight up tough discussion. But at the end of it, I turned to her and I said, listen, if there is a logical reason to do this that you agree makes sense, you will make the right decision. And her answer was yes. But it took time to get her to the point. She's 72. And it took time to get her to that point where she was like, okay, you know what? I see that there's other pedigree out there, et cetera, that can bring value. I mean, the reality is she doesn't know what she doesn't know. And she
and I'd like to make the point, it's not all or none, right? If you've built a relationship with somebody over the years who's done your accounting over the years, they have valuable input and insights. But I guess the point there is, you need to ensure that you're prepared on a financial reporting side, and that the data room is robust and accurate. And sometimes that's requires the expertise of a more specialized professional. And so the way I kind of look at it is that it's more of augmenting your team than a wholesale change, but very important to get that in place early. And I think the other big thing, practical wise, is start detailing how you do things. Process everything out, make your business what I like to call franchise ready. Having a business not dependent on you, clean financials, documented processes will make that business much more valuable to a potential buyer and result in less friction when it comes to sell.
No doubt. Yeah. So practically, I think you have to, I mean, the planning is just so important. I explain things, off the cuff a lot of the time, but I look at it like, if you were to sit down and say, what area are you in? Am I selling to, am I a private equity target? Am I a strategic target, et cetera? And build almost like a persona out for your business. And then further to that, take on the other piece and layer that over top to see, hey, where do I fit? Where don't I fit? I think that's an interesting start to understand where your gaps are. And then with the right advisor there, they're going to walk you through an iterative process that kind of helps you help yourself understand kind of how it works, So we need to get this closer to kind of like this over time in order to kind of prepare yourself. So learning what those gaps are early. And, at the end of the day, the brutal facts are all that matter. I mean, some of these things are scary. Some of them are, maybe you don't like the outcome of some of these things, but the net effective is you're going down the path, or we got to go to do this. The brutal facts are all that matter. The right professionals around you are all that matter. And then you work your process through to the finish line in a way that that's going to take you to where you want to go. So to me, it's like, where are we now? Where are the gaps? And then put a plan into place. Make it super simple. Get with the right advisors. If I was giving you practical strategies, anybody, that's exactly where I would start. I think doing it that way will liberate you in terms of feeling, I don't know all the stuff that's going on, and there's so many moving parts, to kind of really bringing it into a tight conversation where you can actually work slowly at actioning those pieces one by one versus kind of boiling the ocean. That would be kind of my piece. And then once you get to that point where you've got, let's just say, this tool, and you understand it intimately, you can then go off and execute that on a pathway. And as long as you're moving that pathway along and you're checking it in and you're being critical of where you are, I think that to me, that's the first thing that I would do. And then you employ the strategy around that.
Agreed.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So let's jump into the next one, and then we can circle back in a few more questions. So from your perspective as a business transition specialist, what are the key financial considerations that you believe business owners should prioritize during succession planning? That kind of builds on a little bit onto that last point of prior. Maybe I robbed your answer a bit, but you can go off and give your version.
Yeah, well, I'm going to speak from, wearing two hats, right? So
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
where I think, um, the business transition planning and the wealth planning intersect to some degree, right?
yeah,
This is really the reason why I developed a practice that's more specialized around marrying these two important parts. So I'd say, number one is de-risk your personal balance sheet. In a lot of instances, a business owner's net worth is basically tied to the business. And if all your eggs are in one basket, this gives you less negotiating power when it comes time to sell. So I'd say
yeah,
start harvesting some of the profits now in good years and reallocate them to build your wealth outside the business,
yeah,
whether it's in real estate or traditional investments. Really, that's up to you. But doing that, gives you more options. And it also gives you the ability to consider alternative sale options like a partial sale, a management buyout, etc.
yeah,
So de-risking your personal balance sheet's definitely one. Make sure you're protected now for the unknown.
yeah,
I can't tell you how many buy-sell agreements I've looked at between business partners that are not funded, right? So you need to
yeah,
protect the value of the business today from what I like to call the 5 Ds: death, divorce, debt, disability, disagreement. Those are really the 5 Ds that you need to be mindful of, and not having a contingency plan in place that's properly funded is a major financial issue that needs to be dealt with, I think, immediately for most business owners. And I think the last piece is, know your number, right?
yeah,
So, we reference it or call it the wealth gap, but in essence, it's the amount that you need to get from the sale of your business in order to retire comfortably and, ultimately leave a legacy you desire.
yeah,
And this requires getting a financial plan done by a qualified financial planner and not guessing at it
yeah.
and
No, that's key.
doing
Not guessing at it.
not
Not
guessing
guessing.
at it, like as I said, hire a qualified professional. And again, knowing this number
Mhm.
impact how and when you exit the business and allow you to do so on your, as I mentioned at the start, terms and timeline. So that'd
Yeah,
be my last point, on that.
yeah. Um, yeah, no, that's all very good. We've got some extra time here. I'm just thinking, so if we have some people on the line here that ultimately want to, engage in some type of sale or exploration, I mean, I could tell you one of the things that from my experience having, sold to independent people, big businesses, small businesses, this, that, and the other, I think knowing your buyer is so unbelievably important. It's really, I said this before, it's an art and a science, but the art of this can be really, really exhausting. Different companies function a different way. They have different values. They want a variety of different things. And it's just really important to do that to have your experience there. Like if you're dealing with private equity or an independent or a strategic, it could be, completely different. So know your value, know who your buyer is. Yeah, those are key pieces. I mean, I would say this, going through this process is liberating, but I will say this, selling your business, if this is from my perspective, will likely be the most distracting thing you've ever done in your company. It literally can paralyze your business because you end up in a place where I'm selling, am I going, am I staying, am I investing, am I hiring more people? And small businesses, as we know, these are dynamic, competitive markets. So we got to be dialed in there. So I saw Matt. Do we have another question there?
Yeah, actually, we have a few. So
Perfect.
some preloaded ones for Travis. So if I'm the owner of an HVAC company and I'm in my 60s, I don't have anyone in my business that I feel comfortable handing the reins over to, and I'm not ready to retire, but I need to get out of the day-to-day. What would your advice to me be?
Oh, that's back to the comment that Matt made about getting the right people in there. Get those people in first to de-risk yourself from it. The last thing you want to do is be exposed to the business where, your age or your ability or your energy or interest is totally tied to it.
Yeah.
That's got to happen. I would say that has to happen first. Yeah, and then once that happens, as long as you've run the business properly, then there
Mhm.
should be a market for it. I mean, it's interesting too, we're working with a situation right now where someone has someone that wants to exit the business, and there's another part that doesn't want to leave the business. So that's like a perfect opportunity for private equity, because we come in and we bring that, the professionalization, the resources, the capital, the people, and then we take out that partner, and then we ride another day with the current person that's there. So if you're someone, these businesses are like big time like that. Pest control business, our family business, we've just been fortunate enough to have it running for 100 years, but it's kind of no different than that. You've got to tee it up in such a way where it can work. But yeah, that's what I would say. You've really got to figure out that person, and then de-risking it that way, so that you're not exposed to that. And that way you can live kind of in such a way where you can keep growing, and there's not nerves of, hey, how am I going to sell it? I don't want to bring someone on. You kind of have to pick an aisle, and then and then we're either going to stay in, or you're going to get out, or you're going to be partially in. So I don't know if I confused you more than that, but that's what I would do.
Yeah, I can comment a little bit on that as well, just quickly. You bring up a good point. The partial exit, if executed properly, in my opinion, is what most business owners should be looking to do. And the opportunity to partner with the right partner, and that's part of the magic, is finding the right partner. Allows you to do all the things that I mentioned about de-risking your personal balance sheet, removing yourself from maybe the day-to-day grind, positioning yourself more from a strategic thinker and business development, wherever your specialties are. But you also get the opportunity to get a second bite at the apple. And it could be substantially more than the first bite. And I just lived this with a client who in December sold the last part of the business, but had a previous partial exit. Yeah. And the check size for the second part, even though it was only 30% of the business, was double what the original check was. So the point is, that's a great solution on a lot of levels to seek out.
Yeah,
thank you so much. We got one from Shannon, one of our viewers. We want to build an internal succession plan. We want to sell now to our employees for a future buyout. To make this affordable to our employees, any recommendations?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question.
Loaded question.
Oh man. Oh my gosh. The first thing I would say is the decision to sell to your employees, if not unpacked at the outset, is dangerous, because the dynamic of employee takeover is usually levered on the balance sheet. It's usually capital from the potential employee that can buy it, which a lot of the time they don't have. And you end up in a situation where the seller has to then lend a VTB or vendor take back to that employee or whatever to structure it. And in net effect is what the owner's doing is kind of removing themselves from the day-to-day, and they're financing someone else to do the deal. Further to that, structurally, as it relates to transactions type, whether it's share transaction or asset transaction, are treated extremely different at the bank. So in order to get tax benefit, it's, for most people, I would think in this industry, they looking to get their capital gains exemption, which requires shares to be purchased from them. It's very difficult to do that and actually finance it. So the employee thing it's challenging. Now, creating structure around its strategy, I just think the first thing I would do, if it's not been thought about it yet, Shannon, and I would kind of really unpack that, what that looks like in the end, and the things that you're going to have to go through that. The difference is that when you sell to an outside buyer, we have the capital, we don't need financing, we have a team of people, and we can pay the highest price. So that really kind of makes it really challenging for any employee to do a succession, unless that's just what you want to do. And if that's just what you want to do, then phenomenal, good on you. But so just to give you the reverse side of it, first thing I would do is unpack what doing that with the employees does and how that impacts the outcome you want to get.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I would say a couple things there. Number one is, price is important, but not everything, right? A lot of these businesses that have been, multi-generational, have built a presence in the community, have employed people in the community for years, making sure that you have enough to fulfill your life dreams after you've worked so hard to build a business is important, but it's not everything. And so a lot of times when we go through the process of, understanding what your number is, for example, it dictates, that, maybe a management buyout or maybe some form of employee ownership is appropriate, because you've done a lot of the things ahead of time to position yourself to be able to consider that. And that's sometimes what people choose. And I don't think there's any wrong answer here, but from a practicality standpoint, you need to know if you're in a position to do that, to Travis's point, whether that's even feasible. The one thing I would say, and I wish I had our financial planner on because he's becoming a bit of an expert in
We
this
need 4
area.
hours though. We need 4
Yeah,
hours.
but the government actually just proposed in the new budget a provision to allow employee ownership trusts, which follows what they call ESOPs in the US and the UK. ESOPs are very popular in the US. So, basically employee ownership trusts would encourage employee ownership of a business, facilitate the transition of a privately owned business to employees. So this is like brand new. I can't say that we're experts yet in it, but it's definitely something, because of what we advise on, we're looking into as an option for certain employees. So stay tuned, but there is something actually in place
Something
now.
boiling there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic, guys. One more for you. This is to both of you. It's fairly open-ended, but in your roles, have you observed any emerging trends or shifts in the industry that business owners should consider when planning for succession?
That's
We got
yours,
on the
Matt.
spot.
I don't know. I can't do much.
Well, I guess it depends on which industry you're referencing. If you're referencing the HVAC home services business, I
If
wouldn't
you
be
have
a
HVAC
content expert
insights,
there, but if you're saying about the whole exit planning and transition plan business, I can comment on that.
yeah, sure. Let's start there. Even just small businesses or around that.
Yeah, I think it echoes, and it's worth repeating the fact that we're entering into a new supply demand dynamic. Without questions, you can't fight demographics and you can't fight the numbers. And the reality is, there is going to be an abundance of business owners of the small and medium size set that are going to be racing for the exit door at the same time. And that's a very different environment than we got accustomed to. So I think what it speaks to is, again, just making sure that you're one of the businesses that actually sells, and hopefully for top dollar. But, there's going to be some work necessary to position yourself to do that. So that's the shift. That's the major shift that we're getting out in front of and that we see coming.
I can add to that, like, just having been in the space now for over a year at the consolidation level and seeing the folks out there that are doing it. And Canada is so much different than the US. So there's a lot of consolidators in the US, but just for the sake of our conversation today, think about the geography being half the size in the US and the population being 10 times. So it's the dynamic out there is interesting. Here in Canada, there's been a few consolidators. I think we're entering, I would say, maybe the 5th inning or the 6th inning with our phase. So anybody that's in this industry now, I think the consolidation is going to happen. I don't know how long it's going to stay around for, though. I really don't. You've got everybody knows the big brands that are out there. Some of those brands are owned by private equity that have had them for multiple years. And those funds are at the end of their fund cycle, which means that those assets need to be traded, which kind of dries up the opportunity to go out there and start buying businesses, especially at high value. So it's interesting, and at scale, there's no real buyers out. There's no consolidators out here that aren't private equity or large family offices. So from a seller's perspective, if I'm in the industry and I'm thinking about an exit in 5 years, I'm probably having some conversations today just to get a sense of what's going on, test the waters. The US will be consolidating for years to come, but Canada, we have a very small group of large enough assets that these large private equity groups kind of want to buy, and you end up with a lot of fragmentation of smaller businesses, 2 million or under, where it becomes very difficult to consolidate those. We're fortunate to establish our strategy to create our beachhead where we can start to do those types of transactions, but I don't think that the private equity money is gonna stay around forever in this space, just due to the nature of just the kind of nuance of being super fragmented and not overly big. Where in the US, you have these tons of companies that are a lot of them are much larger. So I think that's a really interesting dynamic and a shift that's going to happen. I mean, we're kind of already seeing other people look at it and go, there's too many people there already. So definitely something for people to consider as even if they're 5 years out, get some information, We're going to give our contact information. Let's get on a quick call to chat about what you might be up to, and let's flesh it out, because I think that's a real thing. And multiples are high today. Realistically they are, and private equity are able to make sense of that, but I don't know for how long. Yeah.
Fantastic. We do have a slide with your contact information that we'll put near the end.
Perfect.
Yeah, for sure, that people can reach out. It's for Matthew Langsford. Do you want to give your contact information here, or kind of funnel it to
I can get mine.
emails?
I can just say mine. So mine's like the easiest ever. So it's Travis at travisallan.ca. And then my phone number is 416 560 0234.
Okay.
And if anybody else wants to know a bit more about me, I have a website. It's just travisallan.ca.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll put that in chat there.
Learn everything about me in there. I've opened the kimono, so enjoy the saltwater.
Too much information.
Enjoy the saltwater fish tank on the front page. Full disclosure, I'm a big saltwater aquarium hobbyist, for better or for worse.
Fantastic. Can you see the screen with the contact information pop up?
Yeah. And this is if you want to kind of dig more into the business transition planning, we offer a transition assessment link, which I think provides a ton of upfront value in terms of identifying where maybe there's areas to focus on. But teamlwc.com is probably the best way to get a hold of us if you're interested in pursuing a conversation around this or wealth management in general.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
We got 12 minutes left. Any parting words? And if anyone wants to ask any more questions, please do so. But anything to leave off on until we see you guys next month?
You got anything to leave off on? I mean, you go first. I'll go
second. I think just again, speaking from experience, don't leave this to chance. Right?
Yeah.
You work so hard to build a business. It's got your name on it. Make sure that you take the same standard of care in preparing for a graceful exit or transition as you do in running your day-to-day business. And spending time out of the business, thinking about it, is important at some point versus just working in the business every day. So that would be my parting message.
No, that's good. I really can't add a whole ton to that. Don't leave this to chances, right? I would say anybody, the parting message here for me would be just, selfishly on our side, I've seen so many things, good, bad, and the ugly. And it's just so important you have the right people around you. And it's important to put some effort into that to make sure they're a fit with you. And then, understand and scrutinize whoever approaches you significantly. Like significantly scrutinize, find out their strategy, find out what their plans are after the business is sold, find out what they want to do with your people. Find out all of these things. They're appropriate questions to ask. And if it's the right buyer, they'll have exciting and reasonable answers to deliver. And if not, the alarm bell should be going off. I'll leave everybody with that.
Right on. Great place to leave off on. If you liked what you watched and want to share it, this video is going to be up on HRAI's YouTube page for as many views as you'd like. And if you'd like to host your own webinar, please reach out to me and we can get you up here just like Travis and Matt. But for now, I really want to thank you guys. That's some important information for a lot of HRA members, and I hope they pass it on as well. And I believe we'll be seeing one or two of you guys next month as well for a follow-up session.
Our COO at here at Eclipse will be. Are you referring to CMPX, Matt?
CMPX, yes, but also another webinar coming up.
Yeah, we've got more. Yeah, we've got more coming on. Sorry, I was future tripping into March. I apologize.
No worries, no worries. Check that out on our HRI events page. But until then, thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Matt. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.